Hi and a very welcome back to all the students. So I am back again with the second lecture in the lecture series of organic farming. In the first lecture we had understood about the introduction related to organic farming, right? And in this lecture we are going to understand about the various methods by which plant diseases can be controlled, or we can say that methods that will help in plant protection. All these methods that we will look into are basically methods that are traditionally used, or are natural methods by which the environment will not get harmed, right? So we are going to understand this topic. Before starting, let me just tell you that this topic is like a bit long, and therefore now on I'll be breaking this topic into small lectures of 30 minutes, so that the lecture will also not become lengthy, but in a 30-minute lecture you will be able to understand whatever 2-3 topics, subtopics that I'll be covering in this part, right? So we today start with this topic. So before moving towards the methods that are used for plant protection, let us first of all understand the various principles of organic farming, right? So basically there are 4 principles that relates to organic farming. The very first principle is the principle of health, right? So this principle mentions that organic agriculture should sustain and enhance the health of soil, plant, animal, human and planet as one and indivisible. So according to this principle, it means that health of every organism is important, the health of soil is important, the health of microorganisms living in the soil is important, the health of all the plants, all the animals and all the human beings is equally important. So if ultimately if the soil is healthy, the healthy soil will produce healthy plant will give rise to healthy animals and healthy humans, and overall the whole planet will be healthy, and therefore the health of each and every individual is indivisible, and this relates to the health of the soil, right? So any type of organic farming need to sustain the health, need to sustain and enhance the health of all the organisms along with the soil. So this is the first principle of organic farming. The second principle of organic farming is the principle of ecology, right? So this principle says that organic agriculture should be based on living ecological systems and cycles, work with them, emulate them and help sustain them, right? So the basic idea of this principle is that we should not disturb the ecological systems, the various cycles, the nitrogen cycle, the carbon cycle, right? All the cycles that are already naturally going on in the ecosystem, right? We should not disturb it, and all the activities that relates to organic farming should be based on living ecosystem. It should be such that it should work hand in hand with the ecological systems and all the cycles. It should work with them and it should emulate them, that is it should help in enhancing or spreading these activities, and also it should help sustain all the ecological system and cycles that is present. Because if these ecological system gets disturbed due to any reason, this means that the farming that we are carrying out is not organic farming, right? So all our activities should be such that helps in sustaining this ecological system and cycles. So if you use more of chemicals, then this is not going to sustain the ecological system, and this will ultimately hamper all the cycles and the ecological system. So this should be maintained. The third principle states about fairness. So this is principle of fairness, right? This principle says that organic agriculture should build on relationships that ensure fairness with regards to the common environment and life opportunities. So this principle says that everyone have the fair right to live in the common environment, right? We know that the environment is common. We live in this one environment, and there are so many organisms present, there is so many life opportunities, right? Everyone should have equal share, and everyone should have fair rights to those opportunities, right? For example, if we say organic farming, right? So it means that we are producing good healthy organic products, right? We are producing organic vegetables, organic fruits. So whatever we produce, it should be actually organically produced, it should be fairly produced, so that the price that the customers are paying, actually the price that they are paying should be worth to them, right? So that is the principle of fairness. So whatever organic farming is being done, it should be fairly available to everyone, and whatever the cost is there should be worth, whatever the cost is there, it should be worth the money, right? And so since every organisms have the opportunity to live, it should be like every organism should get their fair share, right? The next principle is about the principle of care. So organic agriculture should be managed in a precautionary and responsible manner to protect the health and well-being of current and future generations and the environment. So the main motto again of organic farming is to take care that our future generation, the coming generations, right, the health of the current generations, the health of the future generations, and as well as the health of the environment should be maintained. When the current generations health will be maintained, this will ultimately lead to the good health of the future generation. And if current generation and future generation is having will have good health, ultimately they will have a good environment, right? So by organic farming we are trying to bring this change. We should try to bring this change by walking along with the ecological systems, taking care of it, and giving produce that becomes helpful to the current and future generations, that will take care of their health. And like this, the future generations will keep on flourishing in the presence of a good environment, right? So these are the 4 principles of organic farming. Now moving towards the plant protection strategies in organic farming. So in the plant protection strategies, basically any kind of disease, any kind of plant protection strategy can be basically divided into 2 types, that is prevention and protection or control. Now what is prevention? Prevention is something that the disease has not yet landed over the plant, and we don't want the disease to come, right? So all the steps that we take to keep the disease away from our organic farm will be included in the prevention part, right? And control is what? That even after taking care of taking all the steps to stop the disease from coming, right? Even after that, now the disease has arrived on your plants, right? So then now all the steps that we will take to eradicate the disease, to remove the disease from the field, will be included under the control or protection part, right? So prevention can be called as an indirect method because the pathogen is not present on the plant, the pathogen is not present on the field, but we are we are ensuring that we take all the steps to stop the pathogen from entering our field. So therefore this is indirect method. It is not directly affecting the pathogen, but it is like indirectly we are trying to stop the pathogen from entering the field. So such methods are basically based on cultivating methods and selecting cultivars. So how can we prevent diseases? By using certain cultivating methods. We can use various kinds of cultivation methods by which we can stop the disease from entering our field. Likewise, we can use selective cultivars, like we can use cultivars that are resistant, we can use plants that suits a particular location. So therefore we should also choose the plants very wisely to stop the disease from entering the field, right? So this is promoting environment friendly farming system, right? So prevention is all about including methods that are environmental friendly, that helps in keeping your farm safe from the diseases without using any kind of chemicals or without any kind of other things to be used, right? Now then what is protection and control? Now this protection or control can be known as direct method. Why? Because now the pathogen is already in your field, the pathogen has attacked your plant, and now if you do not take care of your plant, the plant will ultimately die, right? So this is called direct method because now all the methods that you will use will directly affect the pathogen. The pathogen is there on the plant, and now you will be taking care of methods that will remove that pathogen from your field, and therefore this is called as direct method. So these are mainly methods that helps to control or protect the pest. The pest is already there in your field, and you are now trying to control the pest so that it does not reach a higher level, right? Now see, if you ever get time, you can go back to my video lecture which is about plant pathology, where I have already explained about regulatory methods, cultural methods, the various methods for plant protection, and those same methods are applied here also, right? So there are basically these 5 types of method: the regulatory methods, the cultural methods, the physical methods, the biological methods, and the chemical methods that are used for protecting any kind of farm or field, right? But when we talk about prevention, prevention will include regulatory and cultural methods. Okay, these are methods that helps in preventing the diseases. It will ensure that the disease does not enter your field. So I have listed these 2 methods below the prevention part. Now the rest 3 methods, the physical methods, the biological methods, and the chemical methods, these 3 are methods that are utilized when your produce or when your field is already infected, and now you want that infected things to be removed from your produce. You want those infections to be eradicated from your field. During that time, these methods are often useful. These are physical, biological and chemical methods. Now, since we are talking about organic farming, physical and biological methods are okay, but chemical methods are a strict no in organic farming, because organic farming means sustaining the ecological systems and the cycles, so the soil should not get harmed. So therefore, the chemical methods that are often used in the modern agriculture system is a strict no in organic farming. So we will not be studying about chemical methods in this plant protection strategies. What we will learn is about the prevention methods and the protection and control methods relating to physical and biological methods, right? I hope that this is becoming like giving you a clear picture, right? So today we will start with the prevention part, where we will understand that what are the various strategies that can be used to prevent certain diseases, right? So now the prevention we can prevention part we can put into these subtitles, that is the quarantine or regulatory methods, selection of production site, nutrition management, cultivation practices, crop diversity or crop variety, associated plants, crop varieties and elimination of vectors. So these are some of the methods that can be used to prevent the diseases. To be precise, let me tell you that these are strategies that can be used to prevent the diseases. The disease is not yet in your field and you are trying to keep it away from your field, right? So we are going to understand each of this in a bit more detail. So in the previous slide I had mentioned in prevention the regulatory methods and the cultural methods. Fine. So the regulatory methods is mentioned here, which is like quarantine, and the cultural method will come under the cultivation practices. So that we will understand when next time we will understand about cultivation practices. For today we are going to understand about these three prevention strategies. These are quarantine, selection of production site and nutrition management. So let us move ahead and understand about quarantine and inspection, which can also be called as regulatory method. So for that, first of all we need to understand that what is quarantine. Quarantine is a state, period or place of isolation in which people or animals or plants that have arrived from elsewhere are kept isolated, right? So quarantine is now a very common term. We all have learned what is quarantine because of the COVID situations. So earlier quarantine literally meant a period of 40 days. So anything that has come from outside was kept in isolation for a period of 40 days. So likewise, the Plant Quarantine Act was introduced in 1914 in India, right? So this act was implemented to stop the diseases from entering into any country from outside countries, right? So the Plant Quarantine Act says that the Plant Quarantine Act helps in preventing introduction of destructive pests, right? So what happens is when any plant comes from other countries, there might be any kind of pest or spores or fungal myceliums or bacterium attached with those plants, right? So to prevent those diseases from coming from other countries, this Plant Quarantine Act was helpful. Then prevention of inoculated soil was also included under Plant Quarantine Act. Now what is inoculated soil? A soil that is infected with fungus or bacteria or any kind of diseases is called as inoculated soil. So sometimes when the plant comes from outside, along with that the soil also comes, the soil ball also comes. So the soil ball might also be inoculated, might also be infected, which if not taken care of will lead to spreading of the diseases in that region. So it stops the diseases of plants from entering into any country from other countries, right? So this was a legal restriction which was started, and this is important, right? So the plant, there are various plant quarantine stations which are working at major seas and airports, right? So most of the seaports or airports will have plant quarantine stations where the plant, first of all, when they arrive at a certain region, they are being taken to the quarantine centers, which are usually at the airports or seaports, and there they are kept for certain days where testing is being done. So in the laboratory the plant is being tested for any kind of presence of any type of fungus or disease or spores or bacteria that could lead to further infection, right? So after the test, when the testing authority finds that this particular plant is free from infection, there is no infection in the plant, so then this will then enter the market, this will then enter the country. But if after the test it is found that the plant material is not free from infection, then the plant is restricted there itself, the plant will not be allowed to move forward and it will be destroyed, right? So therefore this plant quarantine act, the idea of quarantine, the rule of quarantine was implemented, which ensures that the disease that does not come from outside into any country, and every country has this plant quarantine act in their constitution, and this was implemented to ensure that the plant is prevented from diseases, any area is prevented from plant diseases, so that the diseases does not spread, right? So this was about quarantine or regulatory methods. So there are agencies that give crop certification to a plant that is free from infection. So when a plant is free from infection, for that crop certification is also carried out. Now the second type of the second type of preventive method is selection of production site. Now what is production site? Production site is that place where where we are planning to grow our plant, that is the production site. So it is very much important that we select the very right area of production, the very right site of production for the plant of our interest, right? So always plants that are suitable to the soil type and climate should be selected. So you see, for example, there are some plants which will only some plants will will love to grow in black soil, some plants will love to grow in dry soil, some plants will love to grow in wet soil, and some plants will love to grow in red soil. So depending upon this soil type, depending upon that what plant prefers what type of soil type and what type of climate, we should select the plant. We should never select plants that do not suit the soil type or climate, right? Because if the plants do not find the climate and the soil to be suitable, then what will happen is that ultimately the plant will become weak, and a weak plant will always invite pathogens. So we should always choose plants that are suitable to the particular soil of that area, and the climate of that area. Plant specific demands are needed to be fulfilled by surrounding environment. So this is a very important point, that every plant have their own specific requirements, and to fulfill their requirements they are dependent upon the environment, right? So these requirements are like exposure to sunlight, exposure to humidity, the various soil properties, right? So all these kind of factors in the environment play a very significant role in the growth of the plant. So a plant that requires hot temperature, if you try to grow it in a cold temperature environment, it will not grow, or even if it will grow, it will become weak and it will not give you good results. So you should grow a plant in such an environment from where it can easily get all its environmental needs fulfilled, right? The third point is the topographic conditions should be proper. Now what is topographic conditions? The topography, the structure of areas vary, right? For example, some areas are like terrains, like plains, some are slopy areas, some are valley areas, right? So a plant that needs slope cannot be grown in valley conditions. A plant that needs plains cannot be grown in slopy conditions. So the topography should be taken care of. If the topography is not correct, again your plant, no matter what you try, will not grow. In organic farming, microclimate formation is very important. What is microclimate? Microclimate is the local climatic conditions that gets formed in certain region because of the presence of plants over there, because of the presence of the plants, microorganisms, animals, etc. present in a small local area, right? So in organic farming also there is formation of microclimate, which is very important. Your soil need to have microorganisms, your soil need to have earthworms, the plants should must be undergoing some kind of ecological cycles, some kind of animals must be benefiting from it, and in return the the organisms must be giving back something to the plants. So that is microclimate formation, which is very important for certain ecosystem, for the ecosystem to be stable, right? So in organic farming, whatever the production site, it should become like a small microclimate, right? Now as I said, conditions are very important, environmental factors are very important, they play a significant role. So for example, if you grow your plants in shaded area, in an area which is enclosed in shade, it is obviously going to support diseases, right? Because when the area is shaded, right, what will happen, that it will not receive sunlight and it will always remain, it will have always have more humidity, and when there is more humidity and when there is no sunlight, often it will welcome diseases. So if you grow in a shaded area, it will support diseases. And for example, damp sites, the wet sites, areas where the conditions are damp, that will support nematode cyst, right? Likewise, damp area are actually reason for all the kinds of diseases, mainly all the kind of fungal diseases, right? So always you should grow your plant in a good sunny condition, away from areas which are very damp. It should get good enough sunlight, because sunlight is often the best medicine to stop the pathogens from entering. Now as I said, that topographic conditions or the production site selection is very important. Let us understand this with the example of grapes. Grapes is a plant that has certain environmental requirements, like it needs a temperature of 25 to 30 degree for good growth. So any temperature below 25 or above 32 will not give you good production, and ultimately some of the plants might also become weak, and this will ultimately lead to um, invitation to the diseases, right? Then it requires sandy to clay and loamy soil with good drainage. So the soil should have a good drainage, right? So if the soil is not well drained, this will ultimately lead to accumulation of water near the roots of the plant, and uh, that will cause the plant to wilt because of the root getting clotted because of water, right? So the plant will not be able to survive. So the soil should be a well drained soil. Then often the grape farms are being grown in a certain kind of slopy areas, slopes facing south, but this depends like what type of slope you are using. Usually what happens is that slope that faces south receives more sunlight, and as that slope receives more sunlight, it warms quicker and the water will get drained easily, whereas slopes facing northeast are more cooler, so which is opposite of south, right? So the slope there is more cooler because it receives comparatively less sunlight than the southern part. So if you have an area where it is more of wet soil, so what you can do is you can make your slope towards the south so that it gets warm, it gets dried easily, and this makes the soil drainage good, right? So it depends what kind of slope you use depending upon the area, but usually grape production is done in slopy areas. So if you try to grow grapes in like valley area or almost plain area, that will not give you a good result. So every plant that you choose, it should always be grown in such an area where easily these requirements are available. If you try to grow a very exotic plant in an area to which it does not belong, ultimately this will lead to um, causing harm to the environment, and this will ultimately invite more diseases, and the plant will become weak and it will not give you good produce, right? The third thing that we are going to understand is nutrition management, right? So balanced nutrition is a very important part in organic farming. So whatever nutrition that the plant needs should be provided in a proper way. Now how is this nutrition determined? This is determined by the fertility of the soil. The nutrition gets determined by how fertile your soil is and what is the local biodiversity, like what are the various plants, what is the biodiversity that is present in that area. So for this we give a very specific term which is called as bioactive soil. Now what is bioactive soil? Bioactive soil is something that promotes balanced nutrient supply. It gives a good nutrient supply to the plant. It serves as an active nutrient serving system, and of course this depends on organic matter utilization and soil structure. So what is bioactive soil? Bioactive is a soil that is rich in microorganisms, that is rich in insects like earthworms, right? So a soil which is devoid of microorganism will never be a bioactive soil. So your soil has to be biologically active with the presence of microorganisms that help in nutrient supply. What these microorganisms do, they break down the dead matter that is present in the soil and that dead matter then becomes during this process they release nutrients into the soil, and that nutrients is what gets utilized by the plants, and the plants become healthy naturally. So therefore it is said that bioactive soil is an active nutrient serving system, right? So this depends that how much organic matter is being utilized and what is your soil structure, right? So a soil which has no microorganism, you can easily identify that by the texture of the soil. The soil that is not rich in microorganism will always look like a dull soil which has no energy, and it will always look like dry. But a good soil rich in microorganism will look like humus, like dark brown, which will have all the kinds of nutrients because of the breakdown of the dead matter done by the microorganisms, and this nutrients gets utilized by the plants. So for the nutrition management, this is the triangle which is very important to understand. You see, there are plants, there are animals, there are living organisms. Their dead matter is there. After their death and decay, this gets adds up to the soil. Now in the soil there are so many microorganisms. These microorganisms, they feed on the dead matter, they release the dead matter into the they release the nutrients into the soil, and the nutrients becomes helpful to the plants. These microorganisms are also mutually related to the plants. Plants obtain their nutrients from the microorganisms, and this way this is a reversible triangle system, and therefore nutrition management ensures, for nutrition management in organic farming, the soil should be very healthy, which should be rich in microorganisms. A soil that is rich in microorganisms will ultimately help the plant in growing better. The best example of an insect that ensures that your soil remains fertile are earthworms. Earthworms are amazing creatures that helps in breaking down, that helps in creating porosity in the soil, that helps in releasing nutrients into the soil, which ultimately are utilized by the plant. But when you use chemicals, these insects, these microorganisms, they die, and your soil becomes sterile instead of fertile. So such type of bioactive soil which is rich in microorganisms are resistant to harmful organisms and pests. So this type of soil will also have microorganisms that will live upon harmful organisms, and they will be removed. So to create bioactive soil, there are natural substances like manure, green manure or compost that can be used to make a soil nutritionally active, to make a soil bioactive, right? So in organic farming, always nutrition management plays a key role to prevent diseases. So if your soil is biologically active, it will ultimately keep the harmful organisms away from the plant, because your plant will also be healthy, and healthy plant and healthy organism is never being attacked by the pathogens, right? So therefore nutrition management is also an important activity to prevent the diseases. And with this we end today's lecture, but the topic has not ended, so we are going to continue this in with the next preventive measures in the coming lecture. So I hope that this has been clear to you. If anything that you want to ask me, you can always comment below, so that I can answer your questions, or I also give my contact in the description box, so you can contact me whenever needed. So thank you very much for your patient listening. Thank you.